What's up, everybody? This is Chu. I'm here with
Pa Houa Her,
and today we have Pa. This is No Eggs podcast, so thanks for listening in again.
aka
I think,
Non Gay Podcast.
yeah, I think we're on episode number almost 9 or 10 in the last 2 months.
Just
so
about.
yeah. So today we have Pa, who I know through my wife actually. Pa is my wife's first cousin. But Pa is a very interesting story, and I'm gonna start it off by just kind of writing. We were just talking about this earlier, but I pulled up she has a Wikipedia.
Whoa.
I know, right?
And so I'm just going to read some of these things off just as an introduction, just to kind of let you guys know what her background is. And I think in this podcast, we'll probably dive into just kind of your experience, because I think it's really interesting. It's unique in the Hmong world. It's not one that I've seen before, and that's the beautiful part about it. And we always try to inspire, maybe nobody's listening, but we always say maybe there's one.
Right. And if
when
we
there's
could bring
one, it's always
people
cool.
from different fields in, I think that's kind of the goal of what we're doing.
Yeah, we just want to hear different perspective out there. But I'll start. First of all, she's a Yale grad.
Go Bulldogs.
So some of the grants and the awards, and like I said, this is all off the internet. She's earned the McKnight Visual Artist Fellowship, 3rd place at the Outwin. How do you pronounce that? Bruchever competition.
I think that's probably as close as
Okay.
to it as possible.
Artist residency in Syracuse, New York. McKnight Visual Artist Fellowship in Minneapolis. She's got the Minnesota State Art Board Artist Initiative grant from back in the day, and then a bunch of exhibitions at the Walker Art Center in Vancouver, Winnipeg, at Minneapolis Institute of Art, Michigan. Fill us in on some more areas where you've had your expos.
Wow, hold on. I did not realize we were going to
This
have
is a
celebrity amongst
of
us.
course.
This is all...
Celebrity,
You said she was
okay.
a professor and
yes, and a
she
current
had some
professor,
big
correct?
accolades, but
Absolutely,
this is pretty incredible.
So yeah, Pa, tell us. We'll start probably from the beginning, but for now, I guess let's just where all have you been? List some of the cities that you can name off the top of your head. That
I've been, let's see, been to Norway, Oslo, Chiang Mai, Thailand, and then respectively all over the United States for shows. Sometimes solo shows, sometimes group exhibitions, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's all photography.
It's all photo work, visual arts.
And where can people see that if they're curious to see?
Yeah, so right now in the Twin Cities, I'm in the Walker's collection, and they
Okay.
have their permanent collection up in this exhibition called 5 Ways In, which is really great. So if you want to see that, you can go and physically see the work. I have some images up at Moncton Market that's been there for the last 2
at
years.
Moncton Market. Okay.
And then online. Yeah, so my galleries, I have a gallery.
What's the
and,
link to that?
Bokley Gallery, BOCKLEY .com. Bokley Gallery.
Yes, so everybody go check it out and
Yeah.
look at her artwork.
Yeah, before we leave today, I'm going to need to make sure I write that down.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So that's where you are now, and you're doing shows all over. You're touring, doing shows, and you're a professor of.
So I'm a professor of photography and moving images at the University of Minnesota.
And how long have you been doing that?
So tenure track, 1 year, but been teaching there on and off for the last 8 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
very
And moving
nice.
images as in movies?
Yeah, as
correct?
in movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right on,
Yeah.
right on.
So.
And so, first of all, were you born in the U.S.?
I was not. I was actually born in Laos. Came here in 1986. And
86.
yeah,
And then I'm sorry, I saw that you went to Yale.
I did.
So what year was that?
Let's see. I was there in 2010.
Okay, so you were one of the probably earlier Hmong people in a Ivy League school, correct?
No, I think before maybe one of a handful of people
Okay.
at Yale at that time.
Wow. Oh, so there were other Hmong people there.
Yeah, so like when I
nice.
was there, there was Liz Lee, who's a state representative.
Oh,
Liz
okay.
Lee.
Wow.
She was an undergrad
Leslie
there.
Yang?
Elizabeth.
I'm just making last names. I don't know. I thought so.
No, not that one.
Okay.
Liz Lee.
Okay.
She's a state rep right now, and before that there was Pa Houa Her, who's a undergrad there, and
Wow.
so yeah, so it was like the first graduate student in my school, like in the
Were you guys all friends as Hmong people? Like did you guys
Yeah.
make an effort to know and
yeah, you know,
to know
just,
each other?
just simply because the community is so small.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like we knew each other of each other. But you know, had you asked me like 2 years before I went to Yale if I knew what Yale was or if I
Yeah.
like was ever gonna go to Yale, I would have been like crazy. No.
Was Yale okay? So let's talk about that. Let's dissect that a little bit. So Yale, going to Yale, right? It's prestigious university. How do you get into Yale? Is that a choice that you have? Do you see you set your sights on Yale, or do they reach out, or like how? Tell us how that
Yeah,
play
yeah.
worked out.
Yeah. Okay, so like a really funny story. So in I think in 2009, I had met this 2007, I think, or 8. I met this woman just by chance, Lily Hang, who graduated from Yale too, right? So Pucku's sister, and I just like went to pick her up one night, and one morning we were driving out to Hayward to see to sort of sit in the Chai Vang like murder trial.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I remember like picking her up and like just like, you know, like we were like getting to know each other because it was like the first time we had met. And I had asked her, like, where did you go to school? And she was like, oh, I went to Yale. And I was just like completely mind blown because first of all, like I had never met anybody who had like gone to Yale. And like I've only seen it in the movies. And then here's this like woman who's like sitting in front of me, next to me. And she's like talking about like her experience at Yale, and I'm just like mind blown. So fast forward 2 years, I decide I'm gonna go to graduate school, and I'm gonna apply to a bunch of graduate school. And one of my professors was like, "Why don't you apply to Yale? You know, like it's,
Your undergrad is at the U.
no, my undergrad is actually at Minneapolis College of Arts and Design.
Okay,
So-
okay.
So was gonna get a bachelor's of fine arts in photography. Realized really fast that I wasn't gonna be able to like do much with that
Yeah.
degree, and that I needed like another degree on top of that to like do something. And so she had like suggested this, and I was like, okay, you know, I think like application fee was like $100, and I was like, you know, like sure. You know, so I applied and got an interview, and then like, you know, was accepted, and it just like felt really surreal. Only because like also like I also don't have like a traditional like background, and I wouldn't say that I'm like smart. I'm actually sort of a dummy, and so it was just like it was like all these things that like felt unreal, and then like here is this like sort of fantasy that I was like,
Right.
stepping into. I don't know.
How did it feel? Did your mom understand when you say, "Hey, I'm going to Yale"?
No, she didn't at all. Actually, she, you know, like I don't come from like an education background,
yeah.
and my parents aren't educated, and so I think my mom was like, I remember I told her, and she was like crying. 'Cause
What's so far away?
She was like, she was crying because she was like, you got accepted to the U, just stay here and
No.
go to the U and I'll support you. And I was like, no.
Where's Yale at?
I've seen that.
It's in New Haven,
Oh,
New
it's in
Haven,
New Haven,
Connecticut.
Connecticut,
okay.
You know, and so like I tell this story all the time, but I think it's like a really funny story too, because like my parents have no idea where Yale was, and so I would say like it's in New York because they know where New York is.
Yeah.
And so I remember like one year she called me and she was like, so where did you say Yale was? And I was like, it's in New York, Mom. And then she was like, oh, really? It's in New York? And I was like, yeah, it's in New York. And she's like, I just caught you in a lie. You're lying to me. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, Yale's not in New York. It's actually in Connecticut. And like, you're not going to Yale. So what are you doing? And I was like, I am going to Yale.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't tell you it's in Connecticut because you don't know where Connecticut is.
I was helping you out.
Yeah. And so like, I'm like, it's in that, it's like, it's in that area. And then, but she was like, well, like, is it true that, President Bush went there? And I was like, yes. So did a bunch of
Yeah,
other
who
people.
else? Who else has gone there that you can
Oh
think
my
off the
God.
top of your head?
So like Bush is a legacy student. So
Okay.
like his father and his brothers, and I'm sure his father's father went there. Let's see.
There's got to be a bunch.
Clinton went there.
Yeah, there's got to be a bunch.
So was that when she kind of realized like the prestige of the school
And
that
does
you
she
were
even
attending?
care?
Okay, she realized because then like, and then like I remember coming back home and she like my mom had like before that like she had never given me money to
Yeah.
go, and so I remember like I was gonna go back to school and she like handed me $100 and I was like, what the heck is this for? And she's like, oh, just so that you can like buy food. And I was like, what? You
Yeah.
know? But it's like it's so wild, right? Like then when I graduated, she came and like visited the school.
Wow.
Too. And
So how many years were you there for? Was it just 2 or 3 year or
It
four
was-
or full
It
4
was
year?
it was 2 years.
The 2
Yeah,
years?
2 years.
Did you enjoy your time there?
I did. It was like really like traumatic and transformative.
Was that your first time leaving the? Well, no. Well, yeah. Had you gone away for long periods of time up until that point?
Yeah. So before that, I lived in Boston for like.
Oh,
a
you
year.
did?
Yeah. And so.
Did you go directly after your undergrad to Yale, or did you take a pause and like
I-
kind of sit around on it and like think about what you were going to do next, and then you applied to Yale? Was there a lengthy time there?
So I went right after my
Oh, right
undergrad,
after
but
the
I wasn't
undergrad.
like a traditional student, also, right? So I like didn't graduate high school. I actually.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Really?
I didn't.
That makes the story even better.
That.
I,
That makes
I
the
didn't,
story even
right?
better.
I was like a horrible student in high school.
What was your GPA out of high school? If you
Oh
can
my
even
God.
if you can even have one,
I mean, I didn't even get a GPA because like
you were never just
Yeah.
there. and stuff?
I was never there. Like I had to like get my GED.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And then I didn't go to college, and I only went to college because one of my best friends like was graduating, and I was like, fuck, like my life is like so horrible.
Right. Like what
You
am I
know,
doing?
what am I
need to-
doing?
Yeah.
And like my best friend is like, here she is getting like an English like degree from St. Kate's, and she's like gonna go on and do amazing things. And here I am like working at this like, sort of like dead end job, and I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And so 3 years after I received my GED,
Your GED, yeah.
I started taking classes at the community college. Yeah.
Hmm.
And did you know that you wanted to go for photography or
No.
cinematography?
No, I didn't. I think very much like the conversation that we have had earlier about our parents, their struggle. I was
Yeah.
very much like wanting to please my parents,
Yeah.
and so I was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go and get like an AA degree in paralegal studies, and then I was gonna go to Hamlin and like get a pre-law
Yeah.
degree,
Yeah.
and then I was gonna go to law school.
Did that interest you a little bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I love like debating,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
arguing,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
like I felt like that was like very natural, but like my parents are completely on board with that.
Yeah.
You know, like super supportive. And then I was like one class away from graduating with my AA degree, and I took this photo class, and I was just like, it was like the end. For
So were you into that at all before?
Completely. I was like a high school.
You were still into you were always into the visual aspects of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like in high school, like photography class was like the
Okay,
only class
okay.
that I like went to. Like the only class that I excelled
And this
in.
is like early 2000s.
Early 2000, yeah.
So we're still in dark rooms and
Yeah,
films, right?
absolutely.
Because digital
yeah.
is not really a big thing till like, I mean, digital used to. I remember when they had the floppy disk digital.
right.
Yeah, the
There's
first
there's
digital.
actually a resurgence of digital,
With the-
of darkroom photography.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
these Gen Zers are like kind of insane.
I noticed that,
yeah.
the retro and having
Yeah,
the
yeah.
retro lens and the retro cams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So totally.
So how's that conversation like where you're set up to go pre-law and then now you make that transition into photography? Like how's that conversation with your parents like?
Yeah, I
Like how did you break the news to them?
I think like okay, so like because I was a horrible student, like any way to keep me in school was like my parents were happy
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, it's also like MCAT is such it's not a traditional college in the sense that like I remember like when I graduated, we didn't have gowns. And my parents were really perplexed by that.
Yeah.
They were like, "What is this even Is this even a real graduation? Like, are you really graduating? Did you really go to 4-year college?
Right.
You know?" And so because it wasn't traditional, my parents were like, my mom especially was having a really hard time like grasping the idea of like that school. But yeah, I think my parents were like they were on board with me being in school.
Yeah. As a
Okay.
general concept,
just
as long as you're in
yeah,
school,
just
that's
as long-
better than doing
yeah.
nothing.
So that
Absolutely.
transition wasn't too difficult. Then I guess they probably didn't also understand like
Did you explain it to them?
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean like
Just
even
I'm
Did you
graduating.
explain-
You know?
yeah, but even when I graduated from Yale, I remember like my dad, like a week later, I'd come home and like a week later, he like handed me this pamphlet and was like, okay, so like now that you're done, like doing your photography thing, like maybe you'll want to look into getting like a degree for becoming a dental hygienist, like at Herzing College.
As if, just graduated
You know,
with a
you know,
master's.
and
that-
like and like
Yeah.
and so like that concept is like
Yeah.
so new to my parents.
Well, I think that field is just a field that would be somebody who comes from a different third world country like that, and you told them like, hey, I want to make a career out of like visual photography. How can you explain that to somebody who has that doesn't seem like a feasible option, right?
No, absolutely.
It's like, it's
Yeah.
just, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it's like, I often talk about it. I've talked about it with even my business is like, I wash cars and we can make a living. And there's shops out there who are making millions washing cars. And that's not even a reality in a third world country. So,
Yeah.
Now we come here and we have all these opportunities and we go into these diverse things that are like not the typical thing, right? Or like he's doing bees and like
Yeah.
people would be like, why are you doing bees?
Yeah.
You could be working, making big money. But I think our generation too, we're seeing like the happiness in our crafts. It can be all the crafts and we have that opportunity. You know,
Yeah.
we have that opportunity.
I do
Absolutely.
relate to that so much. It's like because I graduated from college and then I was working.
Yeah, and what was
working
yours
a
then?
job.
What was your bachelor?
I graduated with kinesiology. It's
Wow.
just a fancy word for gym. I wasn't
Okay.
too dumb
Right,
to
right.
do anything else, so I graduated in gym. I dribbled the ball, learned how to dribble the
Yeah.
ball, then paid $4,000.
But what was your
for
end
that.
goal with that? You were just gonna be a personal trainer or
I was,
something, or
It was like for physical therapy.
Physical
And then I
therapist,
never
yeah.
went back to physical therapy school. Eventually landing like a semi decent job out of college, and then
that had nothing to do with that, right?
yeah,
That had
totally
nothing to do with your degree,
completely
right?
different. I ended up working
Doing youth work?
with the inner
Yeah.
city youth, doing youth programming and stuff like
Okay.
that, and I really enjoyed that. And so I wanted to make a career out of that, and then eventually, with nonprofit, you work, you just get burnt out, and then eventually I wanted to become a farmer, and then I went from having this corner office wearing a suit every Monday through Friday to like wanting to be a farmer. And my
Yeah.
mom goes, wait, what's happening here? Of course, she knew that I wasn't happy where I was
Right.
at. We talked pretty frequently, so she understood the transition. But like, I'm sure for a lot of people, it was kind of like, what happened here? Like, what happened to this guy? Yeah. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something really wonderful about like doing this sort of like, I don't know, like this like complete 90-degree turn.
yeah.
You know, I think it takes a lot of guts to like
Yeah.
do what you want to do
Yeah.
and like try to make something
Yeah.
like out of a hobby or some like I think there's something really wonderful about that, and I think that oftentimes like the thing that like keeps us from moving forward is this sort of the fear of like this fear.
Yeah.
And once you like overcome this fear,
Right.
and you realize that there are things that you can do, and there's so many things that you can do, and that like making a living isn't this like, I don't know, like this cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
It's like once you overcome that, like as like literally like you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that weird that like I always, this is just my opinion, I always blame it on the system teaching you just one way, and then partially immigrant parents also put that on us, and so we always just think that one way growing up. I don't know that our kids or your kids will feel that different now, but for me, I know it felt like there's like this is the path you must take, and then the school kind of teaches you that too. It goes
Right.
high school, college, good job, right? But then, like you said, now that I've taken a leap into, I got my big boy job, I quit my big boy job, now I create my own business. Like you start to realize, like really anything's possible, but you do have to try. Because if you
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
try, then you never get confidence.
Right.
And I
right.
think this is why representation is so important,
Yes.
right? There's a lot of conversation about why this is important and why this is needed. But like, if you've never seen anybody that looks like you or that has a similar story
Oh,
to
of
you
course.
doing something like outside of the box, outside of being a nurse or being a lawyer, like our parents wanted us to be, like, you would never even think like that is a feasible job or something that you can live off
Yeah.
of.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I think this generation now, I think, like they're set up to do better just because there are
Based on-
trailblazers
yeah,
like you
there's-
guys, like that are
there's-
opening their own shop, kind of leaving their careers to kind of pursue what they love, like, and I think that's really kind of paving the way for the next generation.
And us talking
Yeah.
about it is important because if it's not heard, because everybody clicks differently, right? Some
Yeah.
people will have the initiative by themselves,
Yeah.
right? But sometimes it's for some people it's seeing it.
Yeah.
But for some people it's hearing it,
Yeah.
and hearing it can help.
Yeah, I mean, like I think, like for me, I mean, I have like this, like distinct memory of seeing this Chinese American photographer Wing Young Huey, and he was having this exhibition at the Walker Art Center when I was just going and taking this class at the community college, this photo class, and I remember like seeing this photograph of this guy who was clearly Hmong.
Yep.
And I was just like, whoa, what the fuck is this? And
Right.
whoa, like I can't believe Hmong people, like I can't believe like you can make a photograph like this.
Yep.
Or like that these kind of photographs are made. And like that for me was really transformative, and also like really opened my, I don't know, like the possibilities for me.
Right.
But I think it's very important to know people doing different things, and and like I think like we live in a day and age where like becoming a doctor or a lawyer or like having a desk job like is not that it's like not valid, but like also like it's really a thing of the past. It feels really antiquated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
There's other ways.
Yeah,
There's other ways to
absolutely.
make things happen. And if you're
Absolutely.
ambitious, right? Like,
Yeah,
let's talk
yeah.
about that because you have done a lot of things. Sorry, and I just kind of
No,
jumped
no,
in.
no,
I
no,
jumped
no.
back in, but let's talk about because all the things that you've done. At the end of the day, it takes you displacing your body and your energy from your home where everybody's most comfortable to go to each location, meet people you've never met, be okay with the idea of meeting people you're not going to know. So there's an uncomfortable feeling there for I don't know, I don't care who you are, how confident you are. There's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's training, right? You get used to it, you do it over and over and over. So you do all those things and like I mean that's a path that you've chosen to really take, right? And
Right.
and talk about just the experience of going to all these places cuz how many different let's just put a number roughly on how many different art galleries you've had out there in the world.
Yeah, I would say like in the 10 years that I've been practicing outside of graduate school, maybe like, I don't know, like maybe 30, 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of different places to
Yeah.
be at.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people to meet.
Yeah, I will also say that like that world is a very white world, you know, and
Yeah.
like oftentimes like you're having to, I don't know, like it's very performative. Like I
Right,
think about it
right.
as very performative. You know, you literally have to like step outside of your mongness and you have to
Yeah.
like put on this sort of white character and you have to go into the world and like, you know, and also it's like not just like any like white community, it's like an upper class
Yeah,
white
yeah, of
community
course.
that you're
It's
like
art, yeah.
entering.
It's
very different.
Right. And so it's yeah, like I learned really quickly that it is very much about like knowing a little bit about everything and not enough to like be an expert in anything, you know, and so
I can only assume that when you go to a show, let's say I'm just gonna picture myself being a 45-year-old white guy who loves art, and I have all these different art pieces in my mind, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen all these art pieces in the world. Now I see you. You're an artist. You have an expo. I'm gonna probably ramble to you about I love this guy,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
This is what I
yeah.
do, and then you kind of have to know a little
Yes.
bit enough just to
Yes.
be like, oh yeah, I've seen their work.
Yes.
So that forces you to learn a lot,
Yes.
which makes you. That's what makes you an expert too. Is because you have, like you said, maybe not the deepest knowledge, but much more knowledge than anybody else that's not in that field, just based on you having to know that. I mean, it's part of your. If I
Yeah.
meet you, I would want to know that you
Yeah.
have looked around as well.
Yeah, you know, so it's like it's about like knowing like artists who've like come before you who are making work that are similar to yours, artists who are like maybe like of Asian descent.
Right.
And then it's like it's that, and then it's like on top of that, it's like knowing a little bit about like pop culture and current events
Sure.
and like you know or like what's happening. And so like normally if I'm going into a space that like you know like say for instance there's a finance group that's going to come to my studio to look at work for a possible sale. I will often read up on what they do so that I have a little bit of knowledge. You know, so if they're talking stocks or if they're talking money market,
Right.
I'm able to like just be like, oh yeah,
conversation.
yeah. So like there's it's like constant learning. It's
Yeah.
like constant learning for me.
How much of your business is like, or the business model of art, like in sales? Because like you probably
Yeah.
get like a little bit of commission. You probably get
Yeah.
paid just to do shows, and then I'm guessing you
Yeah,
probably get
tell us
commission
about
on
that.
art
I don't
sales.
the business side of this.
I totally like.
because
I'm
I
totally
don't know
open,
anything about this. Yeah.
I totally am open to
Teach
that.
us
Yeah,
that,
and
yeah.
you don't have to say numbers or anything.
No,
like
I
that,
think
yeah.
numbers are really important, right? So, so like normally when you're asked to be in a show, depending on who's asking you or what institutions, how big the institution is. So the bigger the institution, ideally, the larger the stipend or the honorarium is what they like to call it. So like it can range anywhere from $1,000 to a couple $1,000 just to be in a show. And then there's like you know you're able to ask for production costs. So like you know I'm gonna produce something for you.
Right.
Like I need a budget. What's your budget? And so sometimes like bigger institutions will have larger budgets. So you know a budget can be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000. And then sales. I have a gallery. And so my gallery makes all my sales for me. And they take, a normal gallery would take about 50% of your sales.
Is it always for sale on these things, or sometimes it's just straight up to show the artwork, or it just depends how it's set up?
No. Like anything is,
It's always up for sale.
anything is always up.
Is
I
it
mean, I
price-
guess if I
there's
was
a
an
price for
if I was an
everything.
artist and I
Yeah.
had all my images
Yeah.
up too, and you came up and like, I give you 20 grand for that.
Right.
Yep.
But there's also like so they take up so the gallery takes up about my gallery takes 40%.
Yeah.
But that's like after production costs and everything, right? And so like there is that. But also within like the work itself, you know, there's the one of a kind, which is like you're
Right.
not going to be able to
A limited
replicate
edition. Right.
anything anymore, right? And then there's also the editions, right? And so depending on how big or how small your editions are, like that can determine like how much
Sure.
your work
Yeah.
is, like how much sales is. So, for instance, my editions are relatively small. They're either between editions of 3 or editions of 5 with like 2 artist prints.
So explain that when you say editions, just explain that quickly.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
like it's a series of
Yeah,
images.
yeah. So like I have one image, and there's like in the world, there's gonna only ever be either 3
Sure.
or 5 of these, right? And so depending on that, like you can sell, you can make, you can then price accordingly.
Okay.
Also, what and then you can bring up your prices the more museum shows you have,
Right.
the
Been at
more right.
how many eyes have been
Yeah.
been on it? Okay.
Yeah. So the more like the more awards you have,
Sure.
the more like collections you are in, and so like all of those things are like.
And all those criterias, is there like a real core judgment for those criterias to how you price something, or is it just like free market and you
No.
create the value kind of how you want?
Yeah,
right?
so I would say that like it is very much like a demand, right?
Sure.
And so like how demand are you in? Like how much? Like how like so there's that, and I think like there's like strategies too, right? And
Yeah.
so like I'd say like my strategy with my gallery has been like, let's try to get you into museums more so than private collectors. And so when you are in museum collections, then like you then start to build up your stock, and
Yeah.
the higher your stock, the more museums are going to want you, and then the more private collectors are going to want you. And
Yeah.
so like start off there, but these things don't happen overnight.
Right.
They sort of take this like years to happen.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like pricing yourself, like I think that like there's sort of two schools of thought, right? Like price yourself too high in a market that like isn't really in demand of you, then like
Sure.
you're not gonna like like sales aren't gonna happen. But if
Right.
you price yourself too low, and like in a market that like has a high demand for your work, then things are gonna sell out really fast, and then so museums and collections that you want to be in are gonna have a harder time collecting you. Just
Yeah, I mean, because it is that, right? As in photography or anything, when you create a visual, you're only one human being. You can only come out with so many things out of your brain that you've put on paper. So as long as you don't come out with 1,000 of this piece, then
Right.
it is very limited,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, and
It is
so
very limited. It's very unique.
yeah. It's interesting. There's this Freakonomics podcast that I listened to, and they were talking about the art world, and they were saying that like there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of artists, millions of artists in
Right,
the world.
yeah.
But really only like a really small sector, like maybe like 20 artists are really like 20 artists are like control like the market.
Right.
Right.
Like they're actually the ones that are making a lot of money, and and that like there is like in the art world there is like it's a free market, you
Right.
know? And it's like these 20 artists, and it's also like a handful of galleries and art dealers that are either saturating the market or like putting artists making artists' value go up. And it's like literally it's like 5 blue chip galleries that are doing that in a year.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean I think that I've been really fortunate in that I've been able to like sell work, and I think that if I wanted to, I could live off of the sales of my work.
Yeah,
like, the next
because what
couple
else
of
do you?
years.
Because you're a professor,
I'm a
right?
professor.
And then I know you do speaking gigs as well,
do.
quite a bit,
I
right?
do,
So you
yeah.
do those speaking gigs. You're a professor. You sell your artwork. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations on that, because, like you said, we don't talk about this stuff, but when you dig deep enough. In all skill that is your passion, there is a way in a capitalist society
Of
to
course.
maximize on your talent,
Of course.
but you have to seek not always a traditional route, right? And
Yeah.
now I understand why earlier I said you went all these places, because going to all these places built the value into yourself as well to now make a livable and sometimes even better than livable, a very comfortable living by doing all those things. But what I was trying to highlight is it's not easy. You can't just sit at home.
No.
You got to be willing to go do all those extracurricular things, and that's how you get good too. Is each experience impacts you to where it makes you jump a belt level almost, you know.
Yeah. Also, but also we live in a community, and we have what we do, what you do, Pang,
Right.
is you're an outlier. You're an outlier. Sometimes
It's a little uncommon, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm an outlier. In that we're all maybe unicorns, and that there are not a lot of people that are doing the kind of things that we're doing. And so for me, I've always I feel like I'm the only I sometimes I feel really strange talking about the the gigs that I have or the things that I do, just simply because then I don't know, I just think it's in my head it feels really hard for people to understand
Sure.
and
Yeah.
to grasp.
Yeah.
you
I mean,
know?
you,
I relate to that 100%
Yeah.
because a lot of my friends I've become the weird hippie farmer
you're
guy.
the beekeeper,
you
dude,
know, yeah. So I'm
with the animals.
yeah, and so that's all I ever talk about. And so they're always talking about sports, and I'm just kind of I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
watch anything. It's it's hard for me to keep up. So, but yeah, I've become this weird.
But I
Yeah.
think you have the way I like when I look at your farm. I haven't seen another Hmong
Yeah.
person do it. I've seen some of my white friends from other jobs do it, but you have an organic approach. You know, your approach to it is very organic, small time. Because my only exposure to Hmong farming
Yeah.
was Tyson chicken level, 50,000 chicken
Oh, yeah,
type
down
poultry
south.
farm
Yeah.
down south in Arkansas. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
But that I can tell that's done for the money, right? You
Right.
do that because you want to make a ton of money. But the guy who does it for the organic, holistic approach to be self-sustaining, that's a different philosophy to the farm game. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just about the cash. So that's what you bring that I think is completely different. Because I've seen plenty of Hmong farmers, but it's always for how do we make a lot of money
Yeah.
quickly?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's cool. I ain't hating on that.
Yeah.
That's good. Make your money.
I think I do need a little bit more of that. Though,
Yeah, I mean,
because
and that's
I've been,
the balance.
I've been hurting for some time.
That's the
man.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the balance.
No,
but there is a way.
But also that's what makes your story so unique, and it's so you is that you know you don't do it for the money, you do it because you love it.
Yeah,
And you do it
essentially,
yeah, and there's something really wonderful with that. You wash cars because you love doing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing that you love to do.
And we figure out, it goes back to your thing. It goes back to eventually we find how can we actually do the thing that we like and make money.
Yep.
Well, if this means I have to travel more, then that's
Right.
what I'll do. If I have to train more with other people, that's what I'll do.
Right, right.
What must I do to keep doing the thing that I want to do so that I don't have to do something that is not me for the sake of money, stay myself, but still make good money.
Right.
And we see it all the time, but it's never within the Hmong culture, right? We
No,
see
no,
it with
no.
everybody
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
but we're like, that can't be us, but it can.
Yeah.
Well,
It
yeah, I
can.
was just having this conversation with a friend because, a friend, a lot with me kind of starting this new venture, a lot of people were kind of asking about, how do they quit their job and how do they do something similar. And I always tell people, there's already all of these proven models out there,
Yes.
just not in our community.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I tell people just buy a couple of jump houses, start renting
Yeah.
them out, do something. You could go work concrete, you know, but there's all these demands and there's all these proven models that, especially because you're a Hmong person, if you do it, other Hmong people
Yeah.
would just gradually gravitate towards you.
Yes.
So there's a market for all this stuff.
Yes.
And we talked about this in the past. It's as we enter the middle class and we have more and more expendable income, we want these things. We want to
Of
be paying
course.
for this
Well,
stuff.
we're in
We
a
want-
capitalist
yeah.
society where people
course.
in this country we spend money. That's just
Yeah.
the thing that we do,
Yeah.
right? The weekend comes around, what do we do? What are we gonna go out and eat, or what
Yeah.
are we gonna do?
Yeah.
So as long as we can bring good value, and I think if our approach is pure, then
Yeah.
the consumer has every right to choose what they want to spend their money on, and that's what we're here for. We're
Yeah. I
we're
mean,
here for them.
I feel like we're also moving in a direction of real community support, in that I know that on Facebook I have a bunch of friends who are in these sort of like doing these different psychics, right? Whether it is like floor arrangement, cooking and selling their food, organizations, organizings, decorating, hosting events, event planners, like people are doing that, and I like we want to support each other, and I think like we're moving really away from this sort of motto that I used to hear all the time of like, don't ever do business with Hmong people because they're just like horrible, and you would rather much do your business
We've
with
definitely
like white
grown.
people.
I think the new generation,
Yeah.
we've definitely grown to think different now.
Yes.
We're adapting not very fast, but we have.
Right,
We definitely have.
and it's no longer that. It's like, okay, like actually, like I am not interested in supporting white businesses anymore. I want to
Yeah.
support like business of color, and but more specifically, like my own folks. Like,
Yeah.
so like, who are the folks that are doing these things? Like, so like people are asking that question a lot more than I think than they did like maybe 10 years ago.
Right.
When like there was this sort of really common voice in the Hmong community of like, don't trust Hmong people because Hmong people do shitty
Yeah.
jobs. Like you want to continue to trust white people, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that we're like gradually moving away from
And I
that.
think we're also starting to, as Hmong people, especially our generation, the younger generation, like the millennials and under after that, we are also at a point where we understand professionalism. We're starting to really understand what professionalism truly means. So we know that, yes, Hmong people will help you, but your professionalism needs to also be on point
Of
to the
course.
point where it fits not just Hmong people, but everybody. So I always say focusing on Hmong people is always great. I'm very grateful when they come and support my business, but I'm always very careful to be like, hey, this business is an everybody business. If your
Right.
professionalism is correct, then you shouldn't have to worry about anything, right?
Yeah.
You'll get the support from all over the place.
No, go on.
Well, we were talking about this off air right before we did the podcast, but you were saying you were seeing more Hmong students like in the arts.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk about
definitely.
that.
Like, yeah. So I think that like there's some really great Hmong artists that are, and what I mean by artists, I guess I'm talking about like fine arts, Hmong folks
Yep.
who are making like really thought-provoking, critical work, right? So like I'm thinking about Hmong artists, Kwa Mai Yang,
Okay,
Jer Zhang.
they're photographers, they're
No, they're
videographers.
just like visual artists.
Visual artists.
Yeah. Who else? Ja Her. Who else? And Sang Lee, right?
Okay.
So there's like there are these like artists that are, that are making really great work. That like doesn't fit like the sort of our traditional like art sort of mind
Right.
frame. And I think I find that really exciting. I think about like art practice. I think about my practice maybe or so. It's very much in line with like a researcher.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm thinking about like a PhD student who is, like researching like a very specific topic, I
Right.
feel like that's what I do most oftentimes. Like I'm really interested in asking questions and like digging deeper into things that I'm like really interested in.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of things that I'm interested in is very Hmong centric and
Yeah.
Hmong centered. And so, yeah, sometimes, but like oftentimes like Hmong people aren't viewing that artwork. Or at least
Yeah,
like
Right.
not in
that
a-
was my next question. Is when you do all those expos, right? We know that the audience is. Well, tell me, what is the audience at most of your shows?
Yeah, so
Give me an age group,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
skin
yeah.
color, and and how much
yeah.
money they make.
yeah, so I will say that it's mostly white folks, and like maybe 30 between 30 and like 80 years old.
Yeah,
Mostly upper middle class.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, and oftentimes like, that's
That is
the audience.
demographic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen? I'm gonna bring it back to Hmong people. Have you seen Hmong people slowly coming to these now?
Yeah. So I had an exhibition at the Walker Art Center, in 2022. And in the summer of 2022, and it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
Bunch of Hmong
I
people
had
came and
so much, like so many Hmong people. I was actually really nervous. I think like as an artist, when you're making work about a community, the community that you're in, you get really nervous about
Oh, yeah.
the I don't know, like how people are gonna receive the work, and I was really nervous about the way in which people were gonna receive the work. But then also, there was this sort of abstraction in the work that like required a sort of understanding and like thinking too. That I think like was easier for like younger monk folks than it was like for older monk folks, because I remember this work that I showed, I'd gone to Northern California and I was making these landscape portraits of this landscape essentially in Northern California that monk people were farming marijuana in.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so much interested in the like farming of the marijuana or like the monk people, but I was very much interested in the landscape and like the history of that landscape, but then also like as it relates to like the history of monk people and you know, and so like there's like this sort of like all these like layers, and I titled it Pa Kondu, which is like in monk term it's like it's how like monk people like talk about, or like it's like a reference to like marijuana for monk people. And I remember like when the Walker first announced it and it was on Facebook, like older monk folks were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this girl is like throwing our business out
expose it.
there."
Yeah,
You know,
she's
like,
exposing
right? Like, and then like I remember like they like some like they had gone to the show, they had seen the show, and they were like, "Wait, where's the marijuana plants? Like, where are the people? Like, why? Like, if this is about like the marijuana like growing, like marijuana cultivation, like where is it? Like, and it's like that's not important. It's the thing that's important is
Yeah.
like the history of this land, right? And then like also like the history of monk people, right? And you know, like monk people have this sort of history where like they like are pushed out and they go into these places that they like are not familiar with, and then they like take up space that nobody wants, and then they're able to like through
cultivate, they
through
cultivate it,
like resiliency, they're able to like cultivate land that are deemed like uninhabitable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like that is like the thing that's like that I'm interested in.
Well, it's like
I
in
think
Laos, right? Like in Laos, when
Yeah.
when you go there and you look at, well, because I went to Laos, as you
Right.
know, I went to Laos for the first time in December. But I remember you just look on the hillside and you're like, wow, Hmong people are farming this.
The side of the
Yes.
incline is
mountain,
like
Right,
this, and you're like,
right.
for real? I'm like,
Right,
dang,
right.
over there, they're just hitting flat land in
Right,
Arkansas.
right.
Here, you're
Yeah.
farming on
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I
You
believe
know?
the term for that is guerrilla farming. Shout out guerrilla pastures.
Yes.
You know.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
they
yeah,
would
it's
call-
kind of
okay.
where that
And
came from.
that's kind of where your name
Yeah.
comes from? Okay.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Guerrilla
But you know, just like to think about that and to like to say, okay, can you make like can you as an artist, you know, can I make work that speaks to that does
Right.
not you know, that isn't so obvious, that requires pondering, that requires
Right.
like, you know, breaking things down, that requires thinking. Like that for me is like what I think like my practice.
No, but and I love that so much because that's the beauty of art. Like I'm not a huge artsy guy, but I do pay attention to visuals, and like I have a business where we pay attention to how we put up things in social media, how it impacts people, what's the story behind it. More the guy that I hired does that than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think about
Well,
it.
that guy is really funny because like that last video that you posted.
Yeah.
so
He's
fucking
very
good.
creative. But it's like that's the thing. Like or like one that I went to. You know, I was in Amsterdam, and I might have took a couple of things that make your mind expand a little more. But I went to a Van Gogh expo,
Nice.
and but you wonder, right? It just makes you wonder, like, what's the artist thinking? And that's the beautiful part of art, is that there is a backstory as to how this piece came up.
Right.
Which you have to think like that, but how do you explain that to people? Is it all up to interpretation, or do you want to tell people also like, hey, this is what I saw when I created this piece. This is the story to how this image came about. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
are you trying to tell that a lot, or do you enjoy when people just interpret that for themselves?
So like I think that for me like I would say that like I don't have a lot of OCD, and I think like one of my OCD is like trying to like or like needing to control like a narrative, but also
Sure.
like that's something that I'm like slowly letting go too. And one thing that I've learned is like yeah, you can make something, you could say like this is what it's about, but the minute you put it out into the world, like everybody has like different lived experiences, and they're gonna
Yeah.
come to it with their own lived experiences, and their lived experiences. Nobody's life is like mine. Nobody's life is
Yeah.
like yours
Right.
or yours. And like yeah, you can like, try to explain to people what the work is all about, but ultimately they're gonna like come to it with their own interpretation.
Right. Yeah. And I just asked that because I'm often curious.
Yeah,
Like I'm often curious to know, like, hey, what led you here? Because I want to know that there's a lot of mind work
Right,
that went
right,
into
right.
this. Like I
Yeah,
don't want to just know you
absolutely.
took a picture and it looks cool. Because
Yeah.
if it looks cool, but you didn't think about it for a long time, then I'm like, cool, that's cool. But
Yeah.
what's the story? And that's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
me, right?
Yeah,
But we're
yeah, of
all
course.
different.
But
We're
that's
all
also
different.
like the hardest part about, I think, conveying a story or a message with a visual
through
art,
one,
right?
yeah,
It's
through
like-
one image.
Because especially now, like now with social media getting so big, and like I have to be so involved with it just to like grow my business. It's like, all right, how do I tell this my whole story,
Right,
my
right.
life story in this image or in this 1 minute reel, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to hear a different artist's perspective on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of reels, and you're a professor of visual arts, motion. What did you call it?
Photography and moving images.
Okay, moving
moving.
images.
MI.
So how do you feel about, I guess, with social media and the creations of reels,
Yeah.
and I think so many people are getting so involved on their like at their own like micro level.
Yeah.
Like,
So like I just like my friend made it like I think she had asked a question of like why is everybody a digital creator on Facebook?
Yeah, I saw
and
that
like
too now.
yeah, and I'm like totally like really fascinated by that.
Yeah.
I would say that like a couple years ago you would go on Facebook Reel and you would like it would be impossible for you to come across like among Reel, and like now there's like such an explosion among Reel that's kind of great. I think that like because there's so many, it's like completely saturated, and I don't know, like it's very hard to come across like a good Hmong
Right.
Reel, and because I think everybody makes it because there's sort of like talking about like capitalism. There's like there's like a cost and benefit to
Yeah.
making reels, and I think like people are doing it solely for the purpose of like making like Facebook money, and so I think that like there's like a large sector of
Right.
of among individuals who are doing it just for that. But I think the ones that are actually like really meaningful, who are making content that are actually really great, are like really thinking about the
Right.
kind of content. Like I don't think like people are thinking about the kind of content that they're putting out.
Yeah.
And that's
Because
that's the thing. You do have to put a lot of energy and
Yes.
time into thinking
Yes.
about what you're gonna put out there
Right,
because
right.
it can be the energy can be felt through a video.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
like
I can tell when I phone it in.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, totally,
Yes.
right? And so like I don't think that while I think that there's a saturation of Hmong reels, I don't think that there are a lot of Hmong folks who are seriously thinking about content and like what is your brand? I think
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're like just like like what is your brand? What is your Facebook
Yep.
brand? Like what do you put out on Facebook? Like who are you on Facebook? And is that content that you put out like is it a niche content, or is it a content that's like like who's your audience? Nobody's thinking about that.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that very
Or-
few people are thinking about that.
That's a discussion that James, my video guy, and I have a lot of times. Is even when I was making myself content, when I was making content myself, it was just more for exposure and get my brand out there. But there was no real target as to why we're putting this out there and what do we want that to display or show the world. I was just putting it out.
Yeah, and how do you want that back? How do you want that to like be returned back to you? Yeah.
Elaborate on that. Like, what do you?
Like okay, so like you put out a reel, like why are you putting out the reel? What kind of returns do you want?
Right.
Right.
Like, are you
Yeah.
selling a
Do you-
product?
Right,
yeah.
right, right. Okay,
do,
yeah,
do
yeah,
you
yeah.
want like do
What
you
you want
want
people
more
to
do you
get
want
out of it, yeah.
business? Do you want people to follow you?
Right.
You like what is it that you want, right? And I think that we don't like that's something that we don't
It
talk
needs to
about.
be, it needs to be thought about, talked about, planned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I mean,
in your college courses, do you teach on, I guess, like this side of
Yeah, you're teaching on the business
moving
side, on the art side,
Oh.
which we're,
and,
Yeah.
and like the social media side?
no, not at all. I mean, so I teach. I have like a graduate seminar course that I like sometimes teach. I have graduate students that I mentor, and then I teach an advanced class. Sometimes it's a very like targeted like subject. So like for instance, like I'll teach like an advanced like black and white photo class, or I'll teach like
Right.
just like a senior photo class. And then I teach sometimes I will teach like a very like introduction to photography class. And so it's sort of really like it expands the spectrum of like fine arts photography, but like
Yeah.
rarely do I ever like I don't teach the business side of it at all, you know, but I think it's important. I think that like
is.
in especially in the arts, like we oftentimes talk about art and never like the business side
Right.
of art making. And I think like for me especially, I never got the training that I needed, and it was a lot of like the grace of people who like was like generous enough to like be like, actually this is how you do things. And then also
Right.
like my friends, you know, older friends who have like gone through who knows like the business side of it, you know. But like everything is like a lesson. Like I'm finding that like I'm learning things all the time, you know, like so like in the last like 3 or 4 years I've just like really implemented this idea that like I wasn't going to make anything for anybody who wasn't going to pay for production costs.
yeah.
And that if you wanted something
A
like
self-set standard that you
Yes.
implemented
Yes.
that is now respected by anybody who wants to
Yes.
use you.
Yes.
Isn't that so important
Yeah.
to say? Because that ultimately is a personal choice,
Yes,
right? And that's so
absolutely.
important that you say that, because we just talked earlier. I was telling her that I did a speech not too long ago, and I just told her that what I got paid for it, right? But I've never done it, and I never even expected to be paid. And Pa kind of talked about like what she's talking about right now, which is that you set those boundaries, and it's important for people to hear that if you do your own business or whatever, you don't have to just. Sure, there might be a time where you do things that are a bit less than what you want because you need to get yourself out there. But there comes a point where it's okay to set a standard for
Right.
yourself and say, I won't do anything
Yeah.
other than that.
Yeah.
And there's
Absolutely.
not, and that needs to be taught.
Yeah.
Because most people don't know that. And if they do, they're scared of it. But the minute you try and implement those things, that's actually how you gain more control of your life
Right.
too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so I think oftentimes, like in the art world, I think artists in general operate on this
Pretty
like,
freely.
scarcity mindset. Like, if I don't say yes, I'm never gonna have this
Yeah.
this opportunity again. So I'm gonna say yes to everything, and I'm gonna like, and I'm gonna accept everything because I don't know when I'm going to get this.
Yeah, the
right?
exposure.
Yeah,
I
and so
want the
like
exposure.
we operate on scarcity, and so because we operate on scarcity and like being thankful, like we oftentimes like will not speak up for ourselves and will not ask for things that we need, you know. And oftentimes like I think I realized like I think one time I was asked to be in a show and they said that they didn't have a budget for printing and framing, and I was like, okay, well, like it's gonna cost $1,000 to make a
Right,
print
for you to do all that.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
do all that. Like, where am I gonna get the $1,000 from?
Yeah.
And like, how many of these can I make?
Right.
Before I like completely deplete myself financially. And so I think like it was like that. I was like, well, what's your budget? And they're like, 5,000. Okay, well, I can only give you 5 images. You're asking for 15. You need 15,000.
Yeah.
Like I can only give you 5 images. And so like I think like it's through that you're like and also like I just like I don't think like we should be operating on like being thankful and like
No.
you would
Yeah.
never be like you would never be like, oh,
I get caught up in that sometimes still.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
But as the business gets bigger and I get more serious,
Yeah.
It changes. It definitely becomes much more strict and disciplined. But I still get caught up once in a while. But like, it depends. Sometimes it depends where the business is going to.
Yeah.
Like, because I do have employees, I do have things like that. Sometimes there are sales goals that we have to
Right,
meet
right.
no matter what.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's a little bit of flexibility and room there. But yeah, no. But I learned that even, you gotta put your foot down.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's just how
And
it is.
I
Yeah.
love hearing that so much, like as a new
Yeah,
business.
because you're
person,
much newer.
because
Yeah.
like my prices are constantly going down, and then and I'll get remarks like, oh well, I can buy lip balm at the store for like $2-3 or $1. It's like you're selling it for $5, but I'm trying to tell them like, hey, one, I'm an actual beekeeper. Birds doesn't even
Yeah.
have
Yeah, birds,
bees. All
yeah.
right,
Yeah,
that guy
yeah.
like
Yeah,
that guy's
birds,
not even a
bees.
real beekeeper. All right.
Yeah,
And so like I'm like handling my own raw material, making all this stuff myself, and then like you're comparing my prices to like maybe somebody who just
Right.
orders the material.
That means
Yeah.
that
puts
they're
it
not the
together.
clients for you. The
Yeah.
clients for you will
I end
value
up
what
giving
you offer.
into them just because of that
Yeah,
similar
yeah, yeah,
mindset.
yeah. I get it.
Where
I get
you're
it.
like, hey, if I don't do this
And
for
you gotta
them,
sell it, yeah.
I'm not gonna make that sell. So like I end up going, all right, we'll make it a little cheaper. Yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll cut our prices here, yada yada. But yeah, like it's so good to hear that, because like I do believe in my value, and I do believe I am firm. I say I'm firm on this price, but if you talk me down, like I'll.
But it's hard when you're new. It's hard when
yeah.
you're new and you're jumping into the market, especially when you're discovering it on your own.
Yeah.
I think if you've done one business, learned all the lessons, and then do it again, you
Yeah.
know right off the bat not to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
But you have to go through making that mistake, feeling the pains, like what you're talking about there. When you were a new artist, how long did it?
Yeah.
You're saying in the last 3-4 years,
Yeah,
right? But you've been an
totally.
artist for a long
I've
time.
been, absolutely.
So it's a learning road.
It's absolutely a learning road, and I think there's like a cost analysis benefit. I think that's
Yeah.
that's what it's called, right? Like, so like I can only like I think about, okay, what is the exposure, right? And so like when I'm asked to be in a show, or when I'm like so early on, asked to be in a show, and I thought about, okay, like what is the exposure here? Like how is it gonna how is it gonna like benefit me moving forward? And I think like that is oftentimes a lot of the conversations that I have with myself about shows. I think that like as I've been in the system for a lot longer, I'm able to like this year I'm able to say no to a lot of things because I don't have the scarcity mindset anymore.
Yeah.
And so like, but before I would say yes to everything
Yeah.
because I would be like, okay, well, I don't know if this is gonna like, I don't think I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna have the experience anymore, or we earlier we were talking about peaking, and
Yeah.
like jokingly you were
Yeah.
talking about, but like
Yeah.
we talk about peaking all the time in the art
Yeah.
world, and like, and like somebody said to me, you want to have a slow and steady like incline, and because like if we have a slow and steady incline, like that peak is going to be so much further up than if you were just like fast and straight up, and so because when you go up you have to come down sometimes, and and I'm just like I worry a lot about peaking like in the art world, like because it
I mean, have you seen that a lot with some artists
yeah.
that hit their stride, and for 4 years they're
Yeah.
the expo that everybody wants to see, and then they're just
And
like,
then
where is that artist?
Yeah, and then they're like, and then they disappear absolutely all the time.
Do you think it's fads, or do you think it's quality of work?
I think that the market like constantly shifts.
Just it changes, yeah.
And changes, and I think like, I think it's important to, I don't know, like I mean, like I would say that my rule for myself is if you're making work that is good, right, and if you're making like critical work, like you're always gonna be in demand.
Yeah.
But like I don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
So like you would say it's okay to kind of shift, maybe not your style, but shift your trend a little bit to fit the market demands of the time, like as an artist.
But not even like trends, right? Like so for instance, for me, I'm really interested. I'm still very much interested in photography, but like this next show that I have I'm gonna be growing like opium, like a football field of opium.
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah.
And that's like
Oh, that's
totally-
the project? That's what
the
you guys are
project.
going to do?
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
Like a football field of opium, which is like fucking amazing. One, like the fact that like a museum is like, yeah, sure, we'll pay you to grow that. And
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
How
the actual.
crazy.
That's the actual piece. The
That's the
piece is
piece.
you growing opium.
growing opium.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
And so like, the fact that like a museum is like, yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
like
yeah.
let's do that.
Sounds good.
Right? And then like but also like that like so like that for me is like really wild, but completely different than like say like making photographs. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And that like and that's what's I think like that's what's so great about like
It's amazing.
like an artist or being like the art world is that like you can do that. You can pitch that idea and somebody can be like, totally. Like, what
That's
do we need to do
awesome.
that? Let's do that.
That
you know?
expands, like, conversations like this, you saying stuff like that expands my mind so much about things that I can do in my business as well. That what you put out there is a good idea. Everything's a good idea,
Yes.
right? Everything's a good
Everything
idea.
is a good idea until it's not.
Yeah,
You know what I
until
mean?
it's
Like, everything
Yeah,
is
yeah.
a great idea. I think
Yeah.
like, and then also like, try everything once.
Yeah, try it.
Try it. I mean, like we can have all these
What's the
ideas
worst?
and
Yeah.
we can, exactly. What's the worst that could happen? Like
Yeah.
you deciding that
It's
you don't
either a
like
hit or
something.
it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if this opium thing is going to work, but
I think that's amazing. So you're
Yeah.
gonna have it's gonna be inside a museum.
no, it's going to
where
be,
is it?
so this is going to be at the Kohler Art Center in Sheboygan. And
Okay.
yep, Wisconsin. They have an art preserve, and they have like this field that is like that.
Can opium be grown like that?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
okay.
can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You ever been
As
to
long
your-
as it's not for consumption, as long as it's growing,
Well,
they,
okay,
like they don't
you ever
care.
been to
So-
uncle's house and looked in their
I mean,
backyard?
I've seen it a lot
Yeah.
at most people's house,
Come
but
to
I
my
just
parents'
wonder
house.
if you can grow that amount.
I guess
and-
legally.
Yeah.
like,
Okay, so-
for business.
So here's the thing, like, so there are all these different varieties of opium, and there's a very specific variety that Hmong people grow that's actually illegal, like federally illegal.
That's
to
a
grow.
black tar style.
Yeah, and yes, it's like it's like Pavarian or
Okay.
something. And so that's the brand that's the type. That's actually what I want to grow. And so we have a lawyer that's like that specializes in like drug law that's going to be helping us.
Okay.
And like, there's some ways to skirt around it. So like
Yeah.
as long as we're not cultivating it, as long as
Yeah, because that was gonna be my question. Like, is it legal? And if it's not, is it just legal because if you put it in the sense of that it's an art piece, all of a sudden it becomes legal, right?
I think that because we're
That's the
like
angle,
that's
yeah.
the context
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like the piece.
Yeah,
then it will be.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
but
artwork.
like a football field.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, that's
So
crazy.
wild.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's gonna happen in April of 2024, and then the idea is that it's gonna bloom in June, and opium, when they
Goes that fast, huh? From
Yeah.
April to June.
From April to June,
Wow.
like late June, and so it'll bloom for like a week, and then it's done.
Oh.
Yeah, and the piece is like
That's a
week.
lot of pressure though, because
Yeah.
you gotta make all those things go. By
Boy,
June.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
You're
showtime.
not worried about just a couple of tweakers ending up dead on the field.
I hope not. I mean, but also like I feel like that would add to like the piece.
The
Yeah,
art, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
like, that would add to the
couple
Art
of
is
homeless
subjective.
dudes like
Yeah.
just knocked out.
Yeah. I'm very
Oh,
excited
that
about
would. That would,
Yeah.
right? Like
great.
as
Yeah.
maybe not even like a critique on, I guess.
The dark side of the
It
beautiful
would be a
flowers.
critique because then
Right.
like we could talk about like, okay, well, like what is, like, I mean, we can talk about opium as like a history, but then we can also talk about drug in small towns and,
Yeah.
how that has taken over. Right. And so,
I mean, opium itself is such a large
Mm-hmm.
topic. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it firsthand as a EMT on the streets.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it firsthand what the painkillers
Yeah.
Yeah.
can do and what they lead to. So
Yeah. I'm
But
excited about that.
yeah.
So what else are you working on? I know we talked a little bit before the podcast about this big grant and this big project that you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in Hmong porn, not corn,
Corn,
Yeah.
yeah.
not corn,
P-O-R-N.
porn.
Yeah.
Hmong porn.
Yeah, before the podcast, she had mentioned that. I was like, corn? I was like, oh, yeah, that's my field.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I'm actually really interested in Hmong porn, but not as it like relates to America, like more so like
Okay.
in Laos.
Yeah, in Laos,
and
for
how
sure.
it's being like filmed and distributed like within like the Hmong community here in the
Yeah.
United States. But like not so much like the porn itself, like maybe like the critique of the porn and maybe the critique of men in general, because like I think like for Hmong porn in Laos that's being like made in Laos, like the audience is oftentimes Hmong men in America, older Hmong men, and so yeah, like questions that I have is, you know, like does it further perpetuate misogyny? Does it further
Right.
perpetuate Hmong patriarchy? Why are Hmong men oftentimes like concealed
Yeah.
in these porn? Why is the woman?
Oh, is it? Is it? I've not watched Hmong porn, and that's
Yeah,
something I will need to tune in and watch.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they are concealed, the guys, a lot of times.
guys are
Oh, really?
like there is a couple of Hmong porn, and I don't know if it's made by the same person or not, but
does it look like the same production style?
And I guess to premise this too, like we talked earlier, and you said there's like a whole production behind this thing.
Oh,
and
yeah,
distribution.
absolutely.
There's gotta be
It's
a
not
ton of
just some
money
guy
behind
filming
it,
it
too.
on their
it's
phone. Right?
no. It's like a guy with a real like professional camera and like maybe like one or two like assistant, and it's like a storyline that's like made up. It's, you know, I mean, it's like whole production.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a whole ass
Yeah.
production.
Okay.
And so like there is this one very specific one that I can think of at the top of my head where like the guy is like fully clothed. He has on a wig, he has on a hat, he has on glasses, he has on like a fake beard, and he's like in the shower and he's
Yeah.
like getting wet. Like, and he's like fully clothed, but then like the woman is also in the shower with
Yeah.
him, and she's like fully naked, and she's like, you know, she like you can make her out, but the man is not, and it's like it's so wild because then you're like, wait, like how
They
is this?
speak in there too.
They
It's
speak
Hmong?
in. They speak
it
in.
Lao or-
No, they speak in their Hmong, and then they also like, yeah, like they like have sex on like Hmong tapestry. You know, like
Wait.
it's like
Yeah,
so
that's
wild.
That's insane.
But like you said, that's a whole ass industry, right? That's
Right?
a whole industry.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you're like left going, oh my God, like here are these things that are like, I've always been taught that these things are sacred, and like why are people like defacing like these tapestries? But then also like, I don't know, like I think it like then like further, I think for me like it like further questions like this idea of like sacredness, like
Yeah.
with like in materials too, like right. So there's like all these like layers, yeah, and people make them, and then they like you can buy them at Hmong Village and Hmong Town Market, and you like they're not on display. There's like
Are they
it's like-
DVDs?
they're like
Are
DVDs.
they, are they like USB
VHS.
thumb drives?
No. They're
Okay.
like full on movies, and like and they're hidden, and you have to like not ask for them.
Right.
Wow.
It's
See, that's crazy. Yeah, because when I first heard about it, or when you first mentioned it, I thought it was just something on somebody's phone, like just a quick
no.
like minute video. But
But I could see how it would be catered to an older Hmong man audience for sure, right? Because I'm just speaking for myself
yeah,
as a
not really what I'm.
not really
searching
what I
out.
would
Yeah.
tune in for. Not really what I
Absolutely.
would
And I'm
tune in for.
open-minded. I like to watch
wouldn't
all
tune in
things,
for that one as
but-
much.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll tune in for the production value.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's interesting. That's an angle that I've. How'd you
Yeah.
come across that?
Okay, so we have an uncle who used to keep his DVDs at our house, and I think I think I came across it by accident. Like I was in the basement,
Yeah.
and he had like all of these VHS, and I was like digging through
Yeah.
them, and I was like, "What is this?" And
Yeah.
I think I remember like seeing it and being completely like baffled
Yeah.
by it, and then like going, "Oh, I wanna, what is this? I wanna watch it."
Yeah.
And then like watching it and go, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," and then I don't know. Like, and then I'm just like, like gradually as I get older, I'm just
Yeah, it
maybe
is a
little bit
whole
more-
industry. There's
Yeah.
money made. There's
Completely.
there's people getting advantage of. There's
Yeah,
people who
yeah,
are making
yeah.
decisions that probably are not even unaware of how
Right,
far the
right,
reach of all this
right,
stuff is
right,
getting
right,
to.
right.
So yeah.
So it's like for me, it's like really wild to think about. Like so like I'm interested in like the critique, like of like of the situation, like history of it, and like and where like like how Hmong people are thinking about it, and how
Yeah.
and so like that is where the critique is for me, and I don't know I don't know like what the outcome art would be, but
Yeah.
I'm interested in like the
Okay.
research.
So you don't even know if it's going to be a documentary style
No.
or like photographs or
No,
okay.
no, yeah, yeah. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I'm really interested in it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to tune in to like see the outcome of that. Just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like one, I'm a porn connoisseur for sure.
Of course, of course.
I think everybody is somewhere along the line there.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm interested in like, well, that's something that's like not talked about in our community, right? Is the exploitation of like young women over there,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of like the age discrepancies of like the performers. I don't even know if
Yeah.
if you can call them performers, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess there's like
I guess it depends how comfortable
level
you
of
are with the
consent.
topic.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Like I don't know how much consent is actually
Yeah.
given. Like, are people getting paid for this
Right.
stuff? Is it just people getting exploited? I don't
Right,
know.
right.
Yeah.
Tough to know.
I don't know. Can you call it porn when it's unconsented?
No, you can't.
Right?
I mean, I don't know. Like technically, yes, but like if it's
Like
somebody's
just-
not consent to it, it's like
Yeah,
it's
that's
rape.
violation.
rape,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
a violation of somebody's
Yeah.
personal rights.
Yeah, but
and-
also like I mean I think like my hope would be that like I don't know, and maybe this is wishful thinking on my part, but like that like the people going overseas to make these videos are are asking like questions that are not going to be are asking questions that are going to be that are not going to get them like jailed. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because it's obviously like no matter where you are, if you are, videotaping a minor having sex, it's child
Yeah.
pornography,
Right.
right? And so I hope that they're asking the right questions, and I think it and I think that there is a consent, like however small or however big it is. I think that is very evident in like in the production, just simply because
Yeah.
the camera is right there and the
Right.
lights are right there, and
Yeah.
it's a whole production,
Right.
right? But I also like I wonder too, like it's so fascinating, right? Because like Hmong people just don't watch porn together collectively.
Yeah.
Like it's such a
Yeah.
like it's such an individual thing, and it's such
Yeah.
a private
Yeah.
thing. And I wonder if like that even makes like that even matters, that like that the woman is like fully exposed,
Right,
or
right.
and then I think about the men
Yeah.
who are in these porn who are like fully clothed. Like
Right.
there is like
They're
like
hiding.
right.
Yeah.
And there's like a sector in porn in general where men who like in uniform like there's a niche for that, that's somebody's kinks, but like I don't think like these men are working or operating on this niche. They're operating on the idea of like shielding themselves,
Right.
Yeah.
which is like fascinating, right? To like think about that.
Yeah, and I would say, man, I don't know how much we want to leave in, but there's a genre of porn, right, where I think like it's usually typically like white men going into the Southeast Asia, right, and I think and shooting with hookers, I guess.
Yeah. Like in Thailand. And
So, and I want to be careful about, I'm sorry, yeah, I want to be careful about things that I say, but like, okay, so what's the difference between that and what you're gonna do a documentary or what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
talking about, right? Because
Yeah.
because this already exists in other communities,
Right. Yeah.
So what is the difference? Like, why is it so bad when it's our community
Yeah.
that goes in and do it?
Yeah, I mean, so like I guess like I'm not operating on this idea that it's like bad.
Yeah.
I'm curious
As
in
to why
as to like I'm curious about like decisions that
Yeah.
are made.
Yeah.
You know, like why are men concealing themselves?
Right,
Like
yeah.
why is there like a concealment in these men? Because technically like you can have like a POV like porn,
Right.
Right.
where like the person viewing the porn can be made to feel like they're the ones performing,
Yeah.
but it's not like that at
Yeah.
all. It's not a POV.
It's full on two
Yeah, it's
characters,
like
but
two
one's dressed
characters.
and what's not.
Right, and
Yeah.
so like that
What's
becomes
up?
like
There's an imbalance there. Yeah, there's an imbalance.
Right? And so like that for me is like really fascinating.
Yeah,
And thinking
it
about
is
like,
because it speaks to me as if like it's okay to expose one person but not the other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And like, is that like part of like patriarchy, like
for
within
sure.
our
I
community?
think there is definitely for
Yeah.
sure.
And then also like where's the kinks in that?
Yeah.
Like how is that sexy?
Yeah.
I don't like I
No.
don't know. I
Maybe I gotta
really
go talk
wanna
to
know.
I gotta go talk to Hmong OG and be like, hey,
No,
do
just
you
watch
still
it.
want
Dude, just watch it yourself, man, and see.
Yeah, no, but I want to go. I want to go talk to the other Hmong OGs out there and be like, "Hey, listen, I saw a video where the Hmong OGs stay dressed. Do you stay dressed? Is that a thing
Yeah.
that I don't know about? Do I need to
Yeah.
stay dressed
Yeah.
after the age of 40?
Totally.
You
I
know,
don't-
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe I'm just behind. Maybe I just
Right.
don't know that you stay dressed after 40 as a man, as a Hmong man specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so it's. I don't know.
I like
don't know.
that,
The topic is really cool, just because
Yeah.
like this is an ongoing issue, not just the porn side, but the idea that we have, I guess, older people with money and privilege going back into the
Yeah.
old country and kind of
Right,
taking
right.
advantage of that, and now they're recording themselves or they're
Right.
like almost documenting or
Yeah.
incriminating themselves
Yeah.
essentially. So it is interesting as to like why
yeah.
they're doing stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, so like,
That is
I
a
mean,
cur-
we can like even like push this back further, right? So like in like 2015, there was this sort of really big boom in Hmong men going overseas and marrying Hmong Laotian girls, right? And like, why was that happening? Well, like I would say that through my research, Hmong men were going overseas because there was this sort of understanding or this feeling that Hmong women in America were too westernized, and that they had too many Western ideology, and that they wanted to
Demands
find
and-
right
yeah.
and and then they needed and they wanted like a Hmong woman, whatever the fuck that is,
Right,
right?
right.
And but also like the thing that was like fascinating for me was that like before the explosion of Facebook and technology and internet, like in Laos, there was like really just one website where you could go and you could like look where like you can make this connection, like Hmong American men and Hmong Laotian women. And it was this website called toshia.com. And it was like a
Really?
very simple
Oh
Like
my!
early
I think I
2000s?
heard about that.
It's
yeah,
like a
yeah. That
very-
was like a joke going around back in
yes,
the day. Yeah.
it was like
Okay.
such a simple website, right? Where like you can if you're a Hmong Laotian girl or woman, you can upload your image and you can onto this website. You could put down your phone number, and among men, like among American men with very to no like technology, like that is like completely like technology illiterate, can, as long as they know how to type the website, they can type this website, and as long as they know how to click on a few things, they can literally scroll through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images
Right.
of Hmong Laotian girls. Whatever girl they like, all they have to do is put their mouse on top of it, and then like the phone number is there. They can make this call, right? And so like I was like really like fascinated by this website, but more so by like the way so in this website there would be this like every day there would be like a top 100 where we're
crazy.
well thought of.
right
Better, this
right
is better
like
than my website.
okay so
Yeah.
like a top 100 where like what like the hottest girls or the hottest images that like were clicked on were clicked, so like there, and this would happen, there would be like today's hot picks, and there would be like this week's hot pick, and I was like, I was like obsessed, like freaking OCD about going there every day to look at the top 100 and looking at like all the images for like a number of reasons, but more so like one, because like photography, right, visuals, and then two, the ways in which Photoshop was just discovered in Laos, like during that time, and so like people were like photoshopping their faces onto images, and they were like warping their faces, and they were like whitening their skin. Like I just like there was like this sort of explosion of like Photoshop that like I had never seen before, and so I was like really interested in that, and so I would like go every day to look at this website, and I would just like look at all the like top 100s, and what I realized and the thing that like completely blew my socks away was like, okay, like, well, the images that are being picked are like oftentimes of like these like Hmong women who are in like these like Western like outfit, right? Like scantily clad, sexy clothes, who's like, you know, who has like these like Western European features, like mostly like this sort of elongated nose, the eyes, the mouth, right? Like the sex appeal was very like Western, and it was like really interesting to like hear a Hmong guy go, "Oh yeah, like Hmong girls in America, like they're too Western."
Yeah,
and,
but they're
like,
going,
they're too modern, and then they're like going overseas, and then they're like the things that that they say that they're not attracted to are actually the things that they are attracted to, like visually, and that's like, and that to me was always like an oxymoron.
But that proves a big point. That proves a big point because I do think that I've noticed it. I do think that there are a lot of Hmong men that cannot handle a very independent thinking Hmong woman. They are afraid of it, right? They're afraid of it. It's too much for them to handle. They don't respect it, you know, versus like, and whatever, to each their own. But to me, I respect that a ton. Actually, I want that. If you're not that enough to me, I'm like, be a little bit more Western.
Right. Yeah.
Be more independent on your own. Like that's what I seek. So I'm not talking shit if they're seeking otherwise, but there's definitely a lot of that I see.
Right.
Yeah. And you always wonder, like, who are these men, like, traveling and making this trip, you know? And it's usually...
Well, that's where the meme comes from. Whenever you get a picture and then the caption is, "Who uncle is this?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who uncle this?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that like in 2015... like it was a lot of older Hmong folks, and I would say like now.
But there's there's a lot of young guys.
There's a lot of young guys, like a lot of
20s,
like
mid-20s,
absolutely, right. And so like I feel okay. So like for me, I feel like I've just started. I've just started getting back into like the dating scene. This like January, and like man, dating is like so rough.
Oh, I would imagine so.
Well, it's so rough. Like I was like, man, but also like I've never dated, and I feel like I'm like picking up from like being 13.
Yeah.
You know, but it's so rough. But also like Hmong men, I don't know. Like I don't want to feel like I'm talking shit about them.
Yeah.
But also, like,
Sorry,
I feel like
that's
I
what this podcast is.
Yeah. But a strong, independent woman, you're going to want the guy who can respect your opinion, see your opinion. You know, they should be able to do all those things. And for some time in Hmong man crowd, that is a tough thing. They're not good at that.
No.
They're not good at that.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
All the good Hmong men are taken already.
There's stuff about that. Or you might just have to grab a young buck. No.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not born yet.
Okay, you gotta wait 20 years.
Hey, what are you saying here?
20 years.
What are you saying here?
No, but you know, like I was on a date recently, and like the thing that I was like completely turned off by, and I didn't realize this until I was like actually there listening to him talk. Like he was like talking about like how very little money he has, and I was just like, I'm like meeting you for the first time, and I don't want to know that you don't have any money. And now, like, I know you're gonna pay for this meal. I feel like Like I
You
feel horrible
jeopardizing your
because
own life.
like I'm like I feel horrible because like I could pay for this meal
Yeah.
myself. I could pay for your meal, but then you're talking about not having any money, and I'm just like, ugh. And
Not
so
a
like,
great-
where is the like? Where do you go in? And you're like, you
Yeah.
know, I'm like, okay.
But you know, single life. From what I remember before I get married, it's like the hardest thing to me. I think from what I can remember when I was in a long relationship and then that ended, is that it takes a while to readjust to understanding that the single life is not that serious. It's not that serious at all. Like you just play whoever you want to be. You can be whatever, and then when you decide to make it serious, then it can be serious. But like single life is all about like, hey, I'm just this, and this is
Yeah.
this is who I am, and I can be this. I can be whoever I want, just to attract the person, so that
Right.
that leads to getting in a sack or whatever,
Mm.
and then it gets serious. Unless you know right away you're going in serious. But I find that if you go in too serious, you'll be disappointed a lot of times because not everybody's seeking the same thing.
Oh,
So like
yeah.
if you're going in serious right off the bat and say I'm looking for a partner because I'm ready to go step into something long term, that person might not be, and that's just to screw you
Right.
over, and then you end up being the one that's hurt.
Right,
So it's always
right,
like,
yeah.
hey, let me just play my role, you
Yeah.
play your role, and then if it goes somewhere, then we'll get serious
Yeah.
when it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But
like
that's tough to navigate.
right.
I'll just
yeah,
say that.
no, absolutely. And I think like one of the hard things too is like I don't ever tell people, like I just say like I'm like a regular person, and
Yeah.
and for the most part I am.
Yeah.
But I think that it's like hard to be. I think it's hard to like. I think it's hard to be me, like my professional self, like
Right.
in the dating field. And so oftentimes, like I'm always having to like reduce myself.
Because it's probably very intimidating, especially
maybe, but like also like I don't know. It's hard. It's like so hard to like be like, oh yeah, I'm Pa, and like I have like a Wikipedia page, and like I like am a professor.
Well, it takes a
and,
person
like,
who's confident and open-minded to be able to handle
I
it
think
too.
just like normally, like as soon as you pulled up the Wikipedia page, we were able to have a conversation just fine before
Right,
the pod. We were just hitting it off, having a good time. And then as soon as you pulled up the Wikipedia page, something in my head did click, and I was like, oh man.
There is that, right? When you got a
That's so
Wikipedia, for some reason it does
and so, But I guess, I don't know, back onto the topic of dating. I mean, that's just dating 101, right? Not to show all your cards in that first day.
Never show all your cards.
Not all of them,
again,
right?
because
And it's
Pa's
just
new.
Yeah,
She's
maybe
back again.
don't
Yeah.
highlight that. Hey, you're not doing well in life. you
Yeah,
know?
like don't tell me that you're broke.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I mean, I should have known. Well, how should I have known? Well, I should have known when. Yeah, I should have known. But I was just like,
enough signs.
yeah, I was like, oh my god. Like in my head, I was like, oh my god, this guy doesn't have money, and he's like talking about not having money, and like maybe I should just pay for this meal. But I was like, no, I don't want to.
I don't know. Did you guys go on a second date?
No.
Okay.
Tip,
I think
tip
he,
for
like,
you guys.
wondering.
Tip for you guys. Don't talk about your
money.
finances, especially if you don't have. If you're
don't
not in a
talk
great
about-
place on the first
exactly.
date. Yeah.
I should
Just pay for the meal and keep it going.
Yeah, everything is a lesson.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's tough. Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't even know. Like, I
Yeah,
married my high school
you've been
sweetheart.
with
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know like where to begin.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I married my high school sweetheart too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I was like with my partner for like 27 years, and we were married for 20 years. And 2 years ago, he like passed away just very suddenly.
Sorry.
But yeah, like when like the last time I dated was like,
junior high,
junior high
seventh
school.
grade, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and like, I mean, it's like
And now
it's,
there's dating websites.
Either there are
and-
dating websites and
Yeah.
dating prompts and dating groups, and yeah, like I feel like it's so different. There's like a level of expectation that is like involved, and I don't know what that level of expectation is. There's like casual dating, and like just like
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah. And yeah,
It is,
and I'm like
it's a whole world.
trying really hard not to like be offended when somebody's like, "Can we hook?" I'm like, "Did I give you the like?" Like I had a guy ask me if we could hook up, and I was like, "Okay, first of all, like, did I give you the impression that I was okay with you asking me that? I don't think I did. And if I did, where did I ask you?"
I think that's the new normal, ain't it?
Is
Kind
it?
of? I feel like I think with the invention of Tinder and all these hookup things, Bumble and stuff, like it's lots of it does create relationships, right? Because we have seen a lot of people do get married off social media now. But I think it's also opened up the field where people are just like, hey, I'm just like hooking up is definitely is part of one of the options that are there by if you found me on here. Like I feel like that's and then it would be more like something that you would have to establish right off the bat, like, hey, listen, I'm actually trying to get to know you.
Okay.
Because a lot of those dating apps aren't dating apps; they're more hookup apps, right?
I mean, kind of. It's just I mean, if you swipe, I mean, think about before you had to like break past the comfort of actually engaging in conversation with someone. Now it's just like, oh yeah, I'm attracted to them, which usually means you'd probably sleep with them if you're a guy from a guy perspective. So you swipe. So if somebody else swipes with you, you kind of think that. I would think if you're a guy, at least he was honest. Yeah. At least he said it.
I mean,
totally. You know, he didn't lead you on.
Oh yeah,
that's
totally,
good.
totally. I think like for me, I was like, okay, well, like in our conversation, did I tell you that this is what I wanted? And if I did, can you tell me when I said this or when I gave you this, so that like in my next meeting I don't do this, because I was like really offended. I was like, okay, first of all, like who do you think I am?
Right. Yeah.
But then also, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's like the nuances of dating.
That's the navigating that world again.
Yeah. It's kind of wild.
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'll pass. Like I said, I peaked in high school. I married my high school sweetheart, and it's been downhill since then. So
downhill? You mean uphill?
Yeah.
Uphill with your kids, man. Uphill.
Yeah.
But we're in an hour 40 minutes, so we'll probably wrap it up here. First of all, Pa, just thank you so much for coming on. You've been like, I've known you since I've been married to my wife, right? So it's been the last 7-8 years. And we always talk a little bit here and there, but the one thing that me and Peng always like to talk about and that we always find interesting is that in reality, we never have engaging conversations like this unless we do podcasts. And it's just the fact that maybe there's a camera, maybe there's a mic, maybe it's just we know that we've sacrificed our time in our life to actually sit down and discuss the backgrounds of how we get to where we are, talking about difficulties, challenges, success, all those things. And so I've never talked to you for 2 hours straight like this. Usually we're drinking and like just joking around. Yeah, so it's great. And I really wanted Peng to meet you. And I also really wanted the public to just hear your story because, as you said, you come from an angle within the Hmong community that is a little bit more uncommon. And that's for me personally, my personal thing was to really expose you for what you do, because I think Hmong people need to know that, like, hey, that you can be successful in many different avenues, and it doesn't have to be just what we consider the traditional way. And I think kids these days understand that. I don't think they really need to be told, but it's never bad if they needed a reminder.
Of course,
So that's
and
all
please, when you when you come back from Southeast Asia, please come back on the pod, because I would love to hear.
That's right. You're going. One last point. You are going to Southeast Asia for
the summer,
for the next 2-3 months.
2 months
to work, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
this is to film that that's
to film
the piece.
No, I'm making a video, like another video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I'm just like, I just want to go and like
go
have fun.
Venture.
Yeah.
And one last thing, once again, where do people find some of your artwork again if they want to see either your artwork or just see more about you? Or
okay, so physically you can go to Mung Thao Market, the dining area.
Okay,
they have some light boxes. You can go to the Walker 5 Ways In. They have some, like, there's a permanent collection there. And then my gallery, BokleyGallery.com, BOCKLEY, and gallery.com. And then I have a website, but it's phher.com.
phher.com.
Yeah. So
awesome. Well, Pa, thank you so much for your time on this Sunday morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Of course, thank you so much.
All right,
it was fun.
We're wrapped up.
So fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming. That is so cool. Yeah.
So fun.
Like all the things you're doing is